Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Herald podcast, normally recorded in our studio at the Bishopbriggs Media Centre, currently recorded from our volunteers' homes. To keep in touch with us, use our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, which are all at Q and Review. That's CUEANDREVIEW, or get in touch via information@qandreview.com. That's information@CUEANDREVIEW.com. Please like and share our podcasts and give us any constructive feedback.
The Herald, Wednesday the 5th of October 2022. News. 20,000 excess deaths in Scotland linked to Tory austerity policies. This article is by Caroline Wilson. More than 300,000 deaths have been attributed to Tory austerity policies that slashed billions of pounds from social security payments and public services. Scots researchers have calculated that between 2012 and 2019, almost 335,000 more people died than would have been expected across the UK based on previous trends between 1981 and 2011. The analysis, led by Glasgow Centre for Population Health and the University of Glasgow, adds to the existing evidence of a worrying stagnation of improvements in life expectancy since the early 2010s. However, it is the first to quantify the effects of austerity policies implemented by the UK government in 2010 on excess death rates. In Scotland, around 20,000 more deaths than expected occurred. Without support, researchers said people have been dragged under by decreased income, poor housing, poor nutrition, poor health and social isolation, ultimately leading to premature death. The researchers were trying to establish if women were more adversely affected overall, and the study produced mixed results. More than 1/3 of those who died were under the age of 65, and the majority, 66% in Scotland, were men. Expressed as the percentage of the total observed deaths, the excess was 9% and 3.7% for males and females respectively in England and Wales, with the equivalent figures for Scotland being 4% and 2.6%. Changes were seen in just about every cause of death. However, in the 20% most deprived areas, mortality rates rose to a greater degree among women. Cuts to social security payments and eligibility, as well as services, have been shown in a number of analyses to affect women more than men. This is said to be because women make up the majority of social security recipients in the UK, while some individual social security cuts have disproportionately affected particular groups which are predominantly female, including lone parents and single pensioners. Women are also more likely to be poorer and on lower incomes due to inequalities in the labour market and in the division of caring responsibilities. Dr. David Walsh said, "The overall message is that irrespective of gender, there has been this horrific change, and the additional number of deaths are about 1/3 more than we had from COVID." Given what is happening at the moment with the UK government considering more restrictions on social security, it is obviously important that we learn what previous restrictions have done, as the effects have been calamitous. Not only should we not be having further restrictions to social security, but there is a need to reverse what has been done to try to protect the income and therefore the health of the poorest in society. He said there was quite a lot of evidence that showed that austerity may have contributed to a rise in drug deaths in Scotland. He said although they were already going up, around about 2012 they increased massively. If you have a population with drugs issues and you take away their income, they will seek oblivion. The study authors said comparisons of projected and observed rates are subject to a number of uncertainties, and thus we must be cautious in our interpretation of the precise figures. However, they said the figures were likely to be a conservative estimate of the number of excess deaths. Co-author Professor Ruth Dundas, Professor of Social Epidemiology at the University of Glasgow, said, "This study shows that in the UK, a great many more deaths are likely to have been caused by UK government economic policy than by the COVID-19 pandemic. We need to reverse the austerity policies and protect the income and therefore the health of the poorest and most vulnerable in our society." This article is by Caroline Wilson. The Herald, Wednesday the 5th of October 2022. News. Tata National Robotarium Heriot Watt link-up. This article is by Brian Donnelly. Indian giant Tata has hailed a significant link-up with a Scottish robotics facility aimed at promoting AI, boosting entrepreneurship and employment. Tata Consultancy Services said it is entering an applied engineering and research partnership with the National Robotarium, described as UK's largest and most advanced artificial intelligence and robotics research centre, based at Heriot Watt University's Edinburgh campus. TCS Research will work closely with the new centre on innovation as part of a wider agreement between TCS and Heriot Watt to support early-stage AI and robotics product development, entrepreneurship, job creation and building digital skills in the workforce. The Robotarium provides a data-driven incubator environment in which humans and robots can work together alongside academics, technologists, and businesses ranging in size from innovative startups to global enterprises. TCS and the Robotarium will be able to de-risk and accelerate the development and adoption of robotic systems that can be used to tackle social and geriatric care by utilising the unique capabilities of the pioneering research centre. Stuart Miller, Chief Executive of the National Robotarium, said that the partnership will allow both parties to combine our vast combined experience and expertise. Dr. Gillian Murray of Heriot Watt University said, "This unique and groundbreaking facility is already helping to inform and lead the future applications of robotics and AI on the global stage." Ananth Krishnan, TCS Chief Technology Officer, said as part of the partnership, we will leverage the TCS PACE philosophy and ecosystem to accelerate industrial collaboration and increase the adoption of AI and robotics solutions, adding that the move is aimed at achieving our shared goal of empowering people's lives with innovative technology. Part of the Tata Group, India's largest multinational business group, TCS has over 606,000 consultants across 55 countries. This article is by Brian Donnelly.
Recorded from the Herald on the 5th of October 2022. From the sports section, recorded by Amy. Conor Benn returns adverse finding for trace amounts of fertility drug by PA Sports Stuff. Matchroom promoter Eddie Hearn has confirmed Conor Benn has returned an adverse analytical finding for trace amounts of a fertility drug, but confirmed Saturday's fight with Chris Eubank Jr. at the O2 Arena remains on. Benn and Eubank Jr. are set to clash in a catchweight contest in what would be the third bout between the families, after their fathers fought twice in the early 1990s in one of British boxing's greatest rivalries. But the London bout was thrown into doubt following reports of Benn's drug test until his promoter confirmed it will still go ahead. Hearn said in a statement, "We have been made aware that a random anti-doping test for Conor Benn, conducted by the Voluntary Anti-Doping Association, returned an adverse analytical finding for trace amounts of a fertility drug. The B sample has yet to be tested, meaning that no rule violation has been confirmed. Indeed, Mr. Benn has not been charged with any rule violation, he is not suspended, and he remains free to fight." Mr. Benn has since passed a doping control test conducted by the UK Anti-Doping Agency, the anti-doping authority to which the British Board of Boxing Control has delegated its doping control testing for the bout. Mr. Benn has passed all doping control tests conducted by UKAD. Both fighters have taken medical and legal advice, are aware of all the relevant information, and wish to proceed with the bout this Saturday. Fight week media commitments are due to start on Wednesday, with the two fighters set to take part in a live workout at a venue in central London. The media workout was set to begin at 2 p.m, with Benn predicted to enter the ring at 3:25 p.m, and Eubank Jr. to follow him 10 minutes later. That article was by PA Sports Stuff. Recorded from the Herald on the 5th of October 2022. From the sports section, recorded by Amy. Golf, BMX and coastal rowing added to 2026 Commonwealth Games schedule by PA Sports Stuff. Golf, BMX and coastal rowing will be part of the Commonwealth Games for the first time after being added to the Victoria 2026 roster. Shooting and 3x3 basketball will also return to the schedule for the Games in Australia. Athletes will compete across 20 sports, featuring 26 disciplines, while there are 9 fully integrated para-sports. There are also plans to add para-disciplines in golf, coastal rowing, and the cycling road race, with talks ongoing over whether this will be possible. Commonwealth Games Federation President Dame Louise Martin said, "We are thrilled to confirm the sport programme for the 2026 Commonwealth Games, with the additional sports proposed by Victoria 2026 completing an exciting and diverse lineup. The Games are set to be competitive and action-packed, featuring an extensive, fully integrated para-sport programme, the debuts of coastal rowing, golf and BMX, the return of shooting, and the scintillating 3x3 basketball." That article was by PA Sports Stuff.
From the Herald Scotland, Wednesday the 5th of October 2022, from the Voices section, Adam Tompkins. Time for Starmer to be bold. He must reboot Parliament by bringing in PR. By columnist Adam Tompkins. It is not always the case that the Parliament can assert itself without even meeting, never mind voting, but the new Chancellor Quasi-Kwarteng U-turned on his short-lived policy to abolish the 45% additional rate of income tax for one reason, and for one reason only. He would not have got it through Parliament. British politics is always at its best when Parliament asserts itself. Ministers like to think they control Parliament, and so they do, all too often, but Parliament, in the end, holds the whip hand. It is Parliament that can unseat a Prime Minister, as Mr Johnson discovered to his cost this summer. It was Parliament that ensured we never left the European Union without a deal, and it is Parliament that can make or break a budget, even an apparently mini one. It is the same in Holyrood. No Scottish minister can get a budget through without parliamentary support, and, in the Scottish Parliament, where no one party enjoys an overall majority, that means cross-party support. Now, offers will differ as to just how cheaply the Greens have sold their votes when it comes to supporting SNP budget proposals over the years. But let's leave that to one side, for the fact is that, whether it be John Swinney or Kate Forbes, no Scottish Finance Secretary could have done in Holyrood what Mr Kwarteng did in the House of Commons less than a fortnight ago. That is to say, no Scottish Finance Secretary could simply rock up announce breathtakingly broad fiscal measures with no background checks have been carried out on them, seek to impose budgetary measures supported only by a minority of MPs, and act as if it was all a done deal, only to watch, aghast, as first the markets and then the politicians started taking bite-sized chunks out of them. Until last year's SNP/Green Pact, which has short-circuited the power Holyrood would otherwise have had, rendering much of its work pointless, budgets and announcements in the Scottish Parliament were statements of policy intent, what the government would like to achieve if it could find cross-party consent, not announcements of done deals. Parliamentary poodle, Mr Quarteng, by contrast, acted as if Parliament were his poodle and would do his bidding no matter what. Perhaps such hubris is understandable if you've just returned from the country with a freshly elected 80-seat majority, but it is foolish to the point of embarrassing if all you've done is return from having been appointed by a new Prime Minister who most of your own MPs did not even want. Will the Truss administration learn from this debacle? Will they absorb the lesson that it's they who are accountable to Parliament's judgment and not the other way around? We shall see. Personally, I'm not holding my breath. More importantly, will Sir Keir Starmer learn from it? He has been in the House of Commons for long enough now to have witnessed at its potent best and its craven worst. When, next year, he becomes only Labour's third Prime Minister since the Second World War to win a general election, as he surely will, what will he want from Parliament? Will he want a reform chamber to which no Chancellor could come in anything but supplication? Or will he repeat the self-serving mistakes of so-called progressive governments of the past and do as if Parliament is there to serve him? For there is one change above all others, that could finally transform British politics overwhelmingly for the better. Tony Blair and Gordon Brown resisted it when they were in office, for they turned out to be as backward in their thinking about parliamentary accountability as Mr Quarteng and Liz Truss are. Sir Keir should not only learn from his own recent observation, but from his party's long history of missed opportunities. Sir Keir's Labour should finally bite the bullet and revolutionise the House of Commons. The means of doing so are readily at hand. All we need is electoral reform. I don't mind the halfway house of the additional member system we have in Holyrood. Admittedly, that's better than the current first-past-the-post system under which the Commons still suffers, but a fully proportional system is what British politics so desperately needs. Electoral reform. British politics needs proportional representation, PR, because this is the only way of ensuring that governments act genuinely in the interest of majorities, rather than in response to the echo chambers of their own partisan supporters. British politics needs PR because a House of Commons in which no one party is overall majority will produce responsive, pragmatic, intelligent government rather than the ideological mania we have right now. And British politics needs PR because it would lead directly to a realignment of our unfit-for-purpose political parties. It is obvious that both the UK's major parties are in unhappy coalitions. The hard-left Corbynistas no more belong in a reformed and electable Labour Party than the centre-right moderates belong any longer in what the Tory Party has become, a crusade of Brexit Trussomaniacs. Yet they cleave miserably together because the electoral system demands it. Change the electoral system and you change politics. It's the one big constitutional reform Britain needs. We know that the Labour Party, north and south of the border, is considering various aspects of constitutional renewal, reform of the House of Lords, further devolution, decentralisation, a rebooting of local government. The party can navel-gaze about all that as long as it likes. None of it will matter much if the House of Commons, the centrepiece of British government, goes untouched. Sir Keir Starmer has a big choice to make. Does he want to be a pale imitation of Blair and Brown, or does he want to be the man to finally break the mould of British politics, unleash Parliament, and ensure that never again are we subjected to a regime that governs not for the public at large, but for its own small band of swivel-eyed true believers? An opinion piece by Adam Tompkins, who was a Conservative MSP for the Glasgow region from 2016 to 2021.
Herald Scotland recorded on Wednesday, 5th of October 2022. Arts and Entertainments. New Edinburgh Theatre to be named in honour of Sir Ian McKellen. By Herald Scotland, online. Sir Ian McKellen is to have an Edinburgh theatre named in his honour after his record-breaking run at this year's Fringe Festival. The Ian McKellen Theatre at St Stephen's has been named following the veteran actor's acclaimed season of Hamlet at the 2022 festival. The show, which was a combination of dance and theatre, launched the 450-seat Ashton Hall at St Stephen's, a new all-year performance venue in the Scottish capital. Since the Fringe ended, a second 300-seat theatre which will bear Sir Ian's name has been created underneath the Ashton Hall. Hamlet was seen by a record-breaking 13,000 people and named by Theatre Weekly. The actor performed alongside the Edinburgh Festival Ballet in the show, which was directed and choreographed by Peter Schaufus. Sir Ian delivered the play's famous speeches and soliloquies while sharing the role of Hamlet on stage together with lead dancer Johan Christensen. Peter Schaufus's unique contribution to Edinburgh's cultural life during and beyond the annual festival is now enhanced by his new theatre at St Stephen's, Sir Ian said. "I'm honoured that it will bear my name." Schaufus said, "Ian is the greatest actor of his generation and we were thrilled to have him lead our company in Hamlet. Thanks to his involvement, we were the only genuine sold-out hit at the Fringe. We sold every ticket at every performance from the first preview and could have easily extended the run. He generously led our company, and the beanie hat he wore in each performance of Hamlet was auctioned after the show, raising £12,000 to support a bursary fund bearing his name that will now help future young dance students at Edinburgh Festival Ballet School. Now his involvement with our company will live on in this new all-year-round performance venue for Scotland." By Herald Scotland Online.
From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 6th of August 2022, from the news section, J.K. Rowling wears t-shirt accusing Nicola Sturgeon of destroying women's rights. By David Ball. J.K. Rowling has sported a t-shirt accusing Nicola Sturgeon of being a destroyer of women's rights. The Harry Potter author posted a picture of her donning the garment as protesters who opposed the Scottish Government's gender recognition proposals demonstrated outside Holyrood. The protest came as Holyrood's Human Rights Committee published its report into the gender recognition legislation, with a majority of MSPs backing the plans. The proposals would remove the need for a medical diagnosis, replaced by self-ID, while the age is set to drop from 18 to 16. The plans are backed by all political parties at Holyrood, except the Conservatives. But some campaigners claim the plans are a threat to women's rights in single-sex spaces, despite the legislation not impacting single-sex spaces. Ms. Rowling has been a critic of the gender recognition plans. Accompanying the photo of her in the t-shirt, Ms. Rowling said she would stand in solidarity with all women protesting and speaking outside the Scottish Parliament. When SNP's Social Justice Secretary Shona Robinson gave evidence to the committee, a protester was asked to leave the room for wearing the same t-shirt. Ms. Robinson said, "I welcome the committee's support for the principles of the bill, which will reform the system for obtaining a gender recognition certificate in Scotland. Legal gender recognition has been available for 18 years, but many find the current system for obtaining a gender recognition certificate to be intrusive, medicalised and bureaucratic. This bill aims to simplify and improve the process for a trans person to gain legal recognition, giving them better access to their existing rights. Our support for trans rights does not conflict with our continued strong commitment to uphold the rights and protections that women and girls currently have under the 2010 Equality Act. This bill makes no changes to that act. We will carefully consider the committee's report ahead of the next stages of the bill." And that article was by David Ball. From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 6th of October 2022, from the news section, port safety issues and ferry breakdown caused new disruption to long-suffering Scots Islanders. By Martin Williams. An Outer Hebrides island hit by a series of disruptions because of ferry failures is being hit by concerns over safety at a second port. Loch Boisdale, the port which links South Uist to the mainland, has been out of action to ferries between September the 24th and October the 8th to allow for repairs to the line span used by the ferry. A routine annual inspection by specialist engineers and Caledonian Maritime Assets Limited, CMAL, which runs the ferry terminal, has revealed a number of lifting ropes in the line span which need to be replaced at the earliest opportunity. Last year's inspection showed no issues. Now it has emerged that an alternative route for people in South Uist using Loch Maddie and North Uist is being hit today, Thursday, by further concerns over safety due to pier works and adverse weather. Lifeline services between the mainland and Loch Ranza and Arran were disrupted yesterday after MV Katrina, the 7-year-old pioneering diesel-electric hybrid passenger vehicle and vehicle roll-on, roll-off ferry, was put out of action on Wednesday morning after a problem with its generator. Engineers were due to try and provide assistance yesterday. A spare part was sourced and is due to be transported to the vessel this morning, Thursday. Another ferry, MV Loch Ridden, was brought in to operate a sailing-by-sailing basis yesterday, and CalMac warned the service was liable to disruption or cancellation at short notice due to forecast weather and associated sea conditions. But late on Wednesday, CalMac said that all morning sailings on the Arran service are cancelled. Disrupting a sailing is a decision we do not take lightly because we know it will inconvenience our customers and the communities we serve, the state-owned ferry operator said. It comes as US faces further travel chaos, with further ferry cancellations due to weather and ongoing council pier works at Loch Maddie on North Uist. South Uist was told that while losing services for 11 days after a critical safety concern with its main port CalMac would operate additional services to Loch Maddie in North Uist, 42 miles away. But even that service has further disruption today, Thursday, with CalMac saying cancellations were due to adverse weather and works associated with a £15.3 million to upgrade Loch Maddie Pier. It said the combination made it unsafe to arrive and depart in the forecasted wind speed and direction. At least 4 sailings between Uig on Skye and Loch Maddie were known to have been cancelled yesterday. In April, George Leslie Limited began replacing the existing infrastructure at the West Coast Ferry Terminal to cater for a new fleet of vessels. The project, which form a key part of the Skye Triangle upgrade, is expected to be complete by spring 2023. CalMac issued a warning that today, Thursday, further sailings remain liable to disruption or cancellation at short notice. The safety of our passengers, ships and crew must come first, the ferry operator said. It is the latest in a series of disruptions to hit US's ferry services. In August, islanders complained that shops had to ration essential items amid widespread ferry cancellations. It all comes just 2 days after an island ferry service had to be suspended after an engine failure with a CalMac vessels that was due to be phased out. The issues with 30-year-old MV Loch Tarbert led to a suspension of services between Sconsort and the Isle of Skye and the Isle of Raasay after disruption began at around 1 PM on Tuesday. The cancellations continued to run into Tuesday morning while the issues were investigated. And that article was by Martin Williams. From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 6th of October 2022, from the sports section, Aberdeen manager Jim Goodwin dealt 8-match SFA suspension over Ryan Porteous comments. By David Irvin. Aberdeen boss Jim Goodwin has been handed an 8-game suspension by the Scottish FA after his Ryan Porteous comments. The Pittodrie boss had taken aim at the Hibs defender as he claimed blatant cheating led to Liam Scales' second jail dismissal and a penalty award. Goodwin had been charged by the SFA over the post-match comments and had now been ordered to serve an 8-game ban with the outcome admitted. An SFA disciplinary update confirmed Goodwin would serve his suspension with 6 matches immediately and 2 further banning orders suspended until the end of the season 2022-23. Goodwin faces the punishment after being charged over disciplinary rules 73 and 77. The laws read, Disciplinary Rule 73. No recognised football body, club, official, team official or other member of team staff, player, match official or other person under the jurisdiction of the Scottish FA shall, in an interview, a blog on the internet, on a social networking or microblogging site, or in any other manner calculated or likely to lead to publicity, make comments of a discriminatory or offensive nature based on, but not limited to, race, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation or disability, or that endorse or encourage foul play or violent conduct, or are otherwise offensive. There shall be a presumption that any material published in such a manner was published in the name of and or with the authority of the person or body bearing to have published the material. Disciplinary Rule 77. A recognised football body, club, official, team official or other member of staff, player, match official or other person under the jurisdiction of the Scottish FA shall, at all times, act in the best interests of association football. Furthermore, such person or body shall not act in a manner which is improper or use any one or a combination of violent conduct, serious foul play, threatening, abusive, indecent or insulting words or behaviour. Goodwin had said after the loss to Hibs, "I don't know how many times the boy Porteous can get away with that kind of stuff." We showed our players a number of instances when Porteous has won penalties like that in the past. People would say he's good at it and he's clever, but it's blatant cheating as far as I'm concerned, and it's cost my team points. We're telling our players to be careful with him in the box, be careful with him at set plays, and don't touch him as he will go over. I actually had a laugh and a joke with the referee prior to the game to make him aware of it. Unfortunately, just before half time he was sucked in hook, line and sinker. Bought it. And that article was by David Irvin. From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 6th of October 2022, from the sports section, SFA responded Kilmarnock boss Derek McInnes over Kyle Lafferty hearing comments, by Ewan Payton. The Scottish FA have revealed that they offered Kilmarnock the chance to bring Kyle Lafferty's disciplinary hearing forward. The Kelly striker was hit with a notice of complaint last week by the SFA. The 35-year-old admitted he used a sectarian slur in a video widely shared on social media 2 weeks ago while on Northern Ireland duty. Lafferty was disciplined by the Ayrshire club with a hefty fine, as well as ensuring he engages in counselling sessions. He faces further action from the Scottish football's government body, with the hearing date set for October the 20th. He's been charged under Rule 81 of using offensive, insulting and abusive languages, and also under Rule 77, which covers not acting in the best interests of Scottish football. The minimum suspension under that Lafferty could face under the SFA rules is 10 games. He started Kelly's match against St Johnstone last night, which finished 2-1 to the Rugby Park outfit. Derek McInnes said after the match, "He's not banned. We've been given sanctions by the SFA to play our players. He's been dealt with by the club. We took action, strong action. The biggest part was Kel's admission to it. It's not our fault and it's not Kel's fault that the SFA haven't banned him. If that is looking likely, and we're expecting some sort of ban, then why should we hamper ourselves further by not selecting him for the games before the hearing? We've dealt with it. Bear in mind he was in Northern Ireland duty when this happened. We've taken the brunt of it. We'll have to wait and see what comes." However, the SFA insists Kelly had the opportunity to deal with the matter quicker than the date initially set for the hearing. A statement reads, "Following the latest comments from Derek McInnes regarding the notice of complaint issued to Kyle Lafferty, the Scottish FA seeks to clarify that the club were offered the opportunity, under Rule 10.2.5 of the Judicial Panel Protocol, to bring forward the date of the hearing from October the 20th, but declined to do so. The timescales applied under the Judicial Panel Protocol are intended to give those issued with a notice of complaint appropriate time to respond to the charges and fully consider their case prior to the hearing date. Lafferty could also face Hearts, St Mirren and Dundee United before potentially facing a lengthy ban. Kilmarnock have been contacted for comment, and that article was by Ewan Payton."
Herald Scotland recorded on Friday 7th of October 2022. Arts and Entertainments. Theatre. Last Orders from the Ghosts of a Distant War by Brian Beacom, Senior Features Writer. Are young people politically apathetic? Do they share a sense of political alienation and even hopelessness as a result perhaps of being pushed to the sidelines while politicians play with their lives? Youth activism has not always been constrained. During the advent of the Second World War, Glaswegian schoolboys walked out of classrooms to fight in France. And incredibly, in 1936, hundreds of young Scots took off to fight in a war in Spain, in an act of bravery and conviction that seems unimaginable today. The story of the Spanish Civil War's legendary International Brigade is told in Robbie Gordon and Jack Nurse's 549, a play, brackets, with songs, close brackets, set in modern-day Preston Pans. It also offers a dramatic opportunity to consider the notion of politicisation 80-odd years on. We discover that one night in a small pub, 4 young men are haunted by the ghost of George Waters. Their friend, a bartender called Ellen, also has their own deep connection to George's story. The lives of these millennials are contrasted sharply with those of 4 young miners who made their way to the Spanish valleys. Would these pals in the pub ever seem likely to find such a serious purpose? What are their thoughts on the selfless young heroes of the 1930s who walked away from their lives and into a hellhole? And why would those young miners in the 1930s sacrifice so much for a country they knew so little of? What does it mean to fight for a cause? What sort of impact did this decision to fight have on their families? And of course, the story of the 549, brackets, the number of Scots who lost their lives, close brackets, can't fail to resonate. Yes, we can send money to help the battle in Ukraine, but if it were possible, how many Scots would pick up a rifle and go off and fight to the death? What the play does cleverly is to avoid presenting the modern-day young men as having one voice. Yes, they've known each other since they were born. Yes, they love their weekly games of cards together. But each is different. There is the working-class Tory, the socialist idealist, the one who'd rather be anywhere else, and the apathetic cynic. And as we discover, the 4 who left Scotland in 1936 were an equally disparate quartet. The pub setting, however, was not constrained the theatrical imagination of the writers and what they can convey. This is a show that manages to combine fierce physical action and movement, poignant songs emerging from the guitar player in the corner. But overall, it offers a real chance to explore the mindset of those who left an East Lothian coal mine behind in order to fight fascism. Was it about idealism, an attempt to move forward to a new world order, or an escape from the hopelessness of the pits? Martin Donaghy, Robbie Gordon, Christian Ortega and Dylan Wood play the 4 with Rebecca Lumsden as bartender Ellen. 549 Scots of the Spanish Civil War runs at the Tron Theatre, Glasgow, October 6 to 8, and then at selected theatres in Scotland in October and November. The Prime Minister's latest benefits crackdown seems to have arrived at a perfect time for the premiere of Rob Drummond's dark comedy play. Set in the near future, Don't Make Tea imagines a world where the benefits system has undergone a transformation, but is it for the better? The play tells the story of Chris, a woman packed with pride who hates asking for help, but when her condition deteriorates, she has no choice but to claim disability benefits, and that's how she comes to meet Ralph. Ralph believes in the new benefits system. He's here today in Chrissy's home to assess her. His task is to prove that she is fit and capable of working. But Chris knows he is wrong, and that her life will be over if his verdict stands. Can she persuade him to change his mind, and if not, how far is she willing to go to save herself? She then asks herself the philosophical question, if you're capable of killing and disposing of a body, can you really call yourself disabled? What the play does, of course, is ask questions about how society considers and supports disabled people with relation to the benefits system. Director Robert Softly Gale says, I hope Don't Make Tea can ask some big questions about how we value disabled people in society and perhaps spark some conversations that can begin to make things better. A spokesperson for the play said, it is now a more ideal time than ever to stage the play, with this year seeing the introduction of the adult disability payment in Scotland. Don't Make Tea, The Traverse Theatre, October 5 to 8. By Brian Beacom. Herald Scotland recorded on Thursday, 6th of October 2022. Arts and Entertainments. Why are politicians so tone deaf? By Teddy Jameson, Senior Features Writer. Sometimes you do wonder if politicians or their advisors even know that Google exists. In the run-up to the Prime Minister's big speech yesterday, we were told she would be walking onto the stage to a 90s classic. Twitter had a field day with this information. Radiohead's Creep, Jamiroquai's Virtual Insanity, Garbage's Stupid Girl. In the end, the Tories settled for M People's Moving On Up. We can debate the definition of a classic at another time, but unsurprisingly, to everyone but the Conservatives, it seems this did not go down well with M People. So apparently we can't stop Trust walking out to our song. Very weird. Mike Pickering, brackets, the source of the M in the band's name, close brackets, announced on Twitter. So sad it got used by this shower of a government. BTW Trust. Labour used it with permission in the 90s. I don't want my song being a soundtrack to lies. We can maybe forgive him the odd grammatical error in the face of such righteous fury. It would have taken a matter of moments for someone in the Tory comms team to Google Heather Small, the band's lead singer, and find out that her son was a Labour councillor, or, for that matter, to check the song's lyrics. The first line goes, "You done me wrong, your time is up," which, you know, given Liz's travails this last week or two, might be awkward. As for Move right out of here, baby. Go on, pack your bags. Well, that's just a gift to your opponents, isn't it? But then it's clear that politicians never actually listen to lyrics. When he was Prime Minister, old Etonian David Cameron once claimed he was a fan of the Jam's single Eton Rifles, which of course was an attack on Eton. Which bit didn't you get? The songwriters Paul Weller grumbled afterwards. Pop and politics have long been uneasy bedfellows. The former has often offered an easy target for the latter. That's when politicians aren't trying to get some street cred by association. In 1984 in the United States, the Republicans asked Bruce Springsteen if they could use his song Born in the USA as part of then President Ronald Reagan's re-election campaign. The boss wasn't keen. In the years since every election campaign has been studded with stories of musicians angry that their music has been associated with politicians of various hues. Various Britpoppers came to regret their initial association with New Labour in the 1990s. Of course, in the grand scheme of things, reducing a pop song, good, bad or indifferent, to a political jingle is not the greatest crime. But even minor offences deserve to be punished, particularly when they're carried out as ineptly as this. I mean, what in the circumstances is moving on up meant to mean? Moving on up from where? From crashing the economy? What is strange in all this is that the Tories missed the obvious 1990s track for the occasion. Given our recent miseries, the obvious track for Truss should surely have been Dee Ream's Things Can Only Get Better. Or did someone get there before her? By Teddy Jameson.
From the Herald Scotland, Friday the 7th of October 2022, from the news section, Glasgow misses out on hosting Eurovision Song Contest, by Gabriel Mackay. Liverpool will host next year's Eurovision Song Contest after beating Glasgow to the honour. The competition is usually hosted by the previous winner, with Ukraine's entry emerging triumphant following the 2022 event in Turin, Italy. However, the ongoing war with Russia meant that organisers deemed it unsafe to hold the contest in the Eastern European country. As runner-up, the UK was instead selected to do the honours for 2023. Birmingham, Leeds, Newcastle, Sheffield and Manchester were eliminated early on, leaving the decision down to Glasgow and Liverpool. On BBC One's The One Show, Eurovision host Graham Norton announced that the next edition will be held in Merseyside. The upcoming Eurovision Song Contest will be the 9th time it has been held in the UK, but it has only been held in Scotland once. In 1972 it was held in Edinburgh's Usher Hall, with Luxembourg taking the crown that year. The Hydro has, however, hosted a fictional Eurovision Song Contest in the Will Ferrell film The Story of Fire Saga. The film sees an Icelandic duo into the competition, which has been held in Edinburgh, but the Clydeside venue was used as a location for the show. And that article was by Gabriel Mackay. From the Herald Scotland, Friday the 7th of October 2022, from the news section, Rest and be thankful, A83 due out of action again after reopening, by Martin Williams. Scotland's most notorious road has been shut yet again after it is due to be reopened with restrictions on Saturday. The landslip-prone A83 at the Rest and Be Thankful was shut from 7 p.m. on Monday due to heavy rain. It is now due to reopen on Saturday, but under restrictions after being shut for a 5th day today following continuing fears of landslips caused by heavy rain. Bear Scotland, the road maintenance firm contracted by the Scottish Government's Transport Scotland agency, said that, weather permitting, the road will be reopened on Saturday under a convoy system, but it also warned that it anticipates shutting the road again on Sunday morning. When the road is shut, motorists are sent onto a single track route, the Old Military Road, OMR, which runs through the centre of Glencroe and acts as a diversion using a convoy system. It means that the road will have been out of action for at least 6 out of 7 days since Monday. Campaigners have been long called for a full public inquiry to determine why the road is still not fixed. Moves over installing a series of catch pits aimed at preventing road closures came after a landslip around 650 feet above the carriageway shut the road in August 2020. Engineers said thousands of tons of debris, including car-side boulders, slid onto the road after 100mm of rain hit the Argyll Hills. The slip ushered in a series of road closures for the important Highlands route, which, by January 2021, had meant it was open for barely 3 weeks in the space of 5 months. there has been heavy criticism over money wasted over what is to be considered failed temporary fixtures. Catch pits are designed to capture debris material from a landslip and prevent it from reaching the road. 2 years ago, officials said that it may take 10 years for a permanent solution to stop landslides in the iconic Scottish road. Bear Scotland said traffic will continue to be diverted onto the OMR until Saturday morning due to the heavy persistent rain forecast and high hillside saturation levels, when it is hoped a convoy system will be introduced on the A83. But a spokesman added, further rain is however forecast for Sunday, and is currently envisaged that the traffic will be diverted onto the Old Military Road local diversion route in the early hours of Sunday morning. The A83 at the rest has been operating under a traffic light system after a series of landslips over a number of years that have put the important Highlands artery out of action for weeks at a time. Argyll and Bute Council want a new replacement route within the life of the current Scottish Parliament. In August, the Scottish Government announced a £25 million investment for design and development work for the route through Glencroe. The Council welcomed the funding announcement and is now seeking a commitment that the work will start immediately. The final award was given by the Scottish Government Transport Agency to a joint venture featuring Quebec-based consultants WSP and engineering and project management consultants Atkins, which is a subsidiary of Montreal-based SNC Lavalin, while a decision over preferred solution is not due till next spring. The contract was finalised a year and 3 months after the Scottish Government's Transport Agency sets a deadline for the management services to support the delivery of a new length of trunk road at the Rest and Be Thankful. And that was a report by Martin Williams.
The Herald, the 7th of October, and the Voices section. Dream to be free of Suella Braverman and Tory anti-refugee rhetoric by Katrina Stewart. But for the innocent days of 2017, when tens of thousands of people were gleefully diverted by the drama of live flight tracking Priti Patel's plane as it returned from Nairobi, waiting hopefully for her to be sacked on arrival back in the UK. Then International Development Secretary Patel had found herself in hot water following a series of meetings with Israeli politicians while she was ostensibly on her family holiday. Oh no, the lady was promoted to Home Secretary, during which tenure she was found guilty of bullying civil servants and thus breaking the ministerial code. Boris Johnson's government took the attitude that the ministerial code was there for breaking, after all, but in a gallery of rogues, Patel's mugshot really stood out. She was, after all, the woman who brought us militant anti-refugee rhetoric, hostile immigration policies, and the potentially illegal Rwanda deportation scheme. What a gal. Let's also not forget that while other countries were welcoming Ukrainian refugees with open arms, Patel's Home Office instead caused distress and chaos for people who attempt to flee safety by failing to waive visas or even make them easy to access. One might think the country has peaked as far as dreadful Home Secretary appointments go, but it turns out no. Here comes Suella Braverman, or what happens when Priti Patel is fed after midnight. It's a long time since I've watched the movie, so I just googled to remind myself of the specifics of poorly husbanded mogwai. The internet offers the explanation that gremlins have fangs, claws, and possibly a higher intellect. Well, possibly, but it's not saying much. The gremlin Braverman, a ferocious, untamable thing running amok through compassion and basic human dignity. There are no raindrops on roses or whiskers and kittens among Braverman's favourite things. Her obsession, she told a fringe event at the Conservative Party conference this week, is to see people claiming asylum deported on a plane leaving for Rwanda. I would love to be here claiming victory, she says of the lawyers challenging the scheme in the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. I would love to be having a front page of the Telegraph with a plane taking off to Rwanda. That's my dream. Boris Johnson did not counter the UK's participation in the European Supreme Court, nor did Priti Patel. But Braverman is next level. She was rebuked this week by Downing Street after calling for the UK to leave the European Convention on Human Rights against government policy and making an already chaotic Truss administration look even more indisciplined. Nigel Farage tweeted his support. I am 100% behind @Suella Braverman on this. That might be what she wants, but it's certainly not what she needs. Keeping to her theme, Braverman also spoke against the threat of political correctness and expressed her delight at annoying the left. Girl really needs to get out more. In her conference speech, the Home Secretary pledged that anyone entering the country through non-government sanctioned routes would be deported, as would anyone who would first reach a safe country before arriving on British shores. She praised Patel for laying a solid foundation on which what she might build a temple of torture. Immigration system. You think this would be an easy win for Labour, a chance for them to come out swinging. But no, Shadow Councillor Rachel Reeves took enough confidence from Labour's landslide polling to this week chastise the Conservatives for using their 13 years in government to be too weak on immigration and for not deporting enough people. It beggars belief that a Labour MP would be calling for more deportations. Does this speak to what Reeves believes is a public mood? She's wrong, if so. The outpouring of disgust at Braverman's comments show a public more progressive than politicians give us credit for. Whilst Sir Keir Starmer's fetid conference speech led him battling against standing ovations, his lines on immigration policy contained the dreaded words points-based system. There was a deserved pushback against this when Boris Johnson suggested it, and there should be equal scrutiny of any such system, whether it comes from the left or the right. The Tories are playing to a small, morally panicked crowd who thrive on anti-immigrant and anti-immigration rhetoric, not a majority who balk at the notion of hostile politics and nothing but cruelty crystallised. Time was, these were the sorts of hard right-wing views that holding them had to keep discreet, veiled, but we're not in Kingston Falls anymore, Billy. Now those on the right are emboldened to say the quiet parts out loud. Such policies and opinions need to fit within the limits of public respectability, the confines of what will be accepted in civil society. Those boundaries, though, are becoming ever more elastic. Tory chairman Jake Perry was chuntering the quiet part out loud on Sunday in a way perfectly illustrative of the current Conservative approach to all things, which seems to be make the most of what you've got or just try harder. In response to the question of increasing energy bills, he suggested householders might cut their consumption or make lemonade from lemons by going out there and getting that new job with a higher salary. New job? Perhaps he might like to take his own advice. With an economy in turmoil, it would be more prudent for the government to look how immigration might be used to properly and humanely bolster productivity, not as merely a front in the culture war. Martin Luther King also famously had a dream. His dream that was his little children will live in a nation where they will not be judged by the colour of their skin, but the content of their character. It's probably unfair to compare the two, Braverman and King. As it currently stands, Braverman's dream seems far more likely to come true. Braverman is not doing much to bolster confidence in the content of her character. She's not doing much to bolster any sense that she respects the electorate, nor that she possesses any empathy for those in need. Her words, that she has a dream of cruel deportations, sending vulnerable people to uncertain fates, that she's obsessed by it, are the words of someone who fails to understand the gravity of her office or have any insight into the real-world implications of what she wants to see. Yes, she was playing to a particular crowd, But it's an astonishing short-sightedness to fail to realise her words would have reached beyond a small room of party faithful. Braverman, then, has not escalated the level of intelligence in the role of Home Secretary at the same rate as she's escalated the level of cruelty. Free of logic, free of empathy, free of intelligence. I can't be the only one with a dream of voting these people out. That was by Katrina Stewart. The Herald, the 7th of October, and the Voices section. Opinion. What's so bad about changing your mind? By Dr. Christian Harrison. Dr. Christian Harrison is a reader in leadership at the University of the West of Scotland. Don't be afraid to change your mind. It's a strength to admit when you're wrong, not a weakness. These are basic principles of leadership. Let's face it, no one enjoys working for someone who is too stubborn to admit when they have made a mistake. So why is it that changing your mind is so catastrophic when it comes to politics? It's a question I've no doubt that Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng have asked themselves numerous times over the last week. The Conservative Party has endured a torrid week on the back of a poorly received mini-budget, followed by a U-turn which may well have things worse judging by recent polls. As an academic who specialises in leadership, I've always found the concept of the political U-turn fascinating. Why, in this context, is what essentially amounts to listening to feedback and acting on it viewed so negatively? And how does one come back from it? Part of the reason is rooted in an ingrained idea of what a leader should be. We are, as a society, fascinated with heroic leaders. People who have stuck to their convictions and against all odds proved their doubters wrong. They may be flawed, but in terms of the decisions that matter, they are flawless. It's a high bar and it creates challenging scenario in politics. If a politician changes approach, it can be like taking a wrecking ball to your reputation. As a result, there's a clear hesitancy to do so, a reluctance to act quickly to address negative feedback, often leading to a snowball effect. Perhaps this accounts for the circumstances surrounding the reversal of the decision to scrap the 45p tax rate. Perhaps not. Whatever the reason, it's created a challenging situation for the Prime Minister and Chancellor, one from which they may struggle to recover. But it isn't a lost cause. When it comes to how we perceive a leader, a sense of momentum is incredibly important. Although the polls are far from favourable for Prime Minister Truss at the moment, it's more likely than not we will see some degree of an upward trend. A slight movement in an upward direction can lead to a bigger swing, and even a perception that good decisions are being made. This is a government that, to a degree, has time on its hands. The next election is unlikely to take place until January 2025. For that very reason, the Labour Party should not take its current lead for granted. At the moment, Ms Truss is trying to frame her government as a listening government, people who react to feedback and change course accordingly. For this argument to work, she does not need to persuade every voter, just some. This may provide a platform and a perception of forward momentum. Whether or not this is enough for her party to have a fighting chance in the next election remains to be seen, but it may be enough to ensure that Ms Truss is the Prime Minister participating in that fight. That was by Dr. Christian Harrison.
From the Herald Scotland on Monday, 10th October, from the news section. Nicola Sturgeon Tory comments backed by John Swinney. By Gabriel Mackay. Deputy First Minister John Swinney has backed Nicola Sturgeon over her comments on the Conservative Party, stating, "I associate myself with her words." The First Minister stated over the weekend that she detests the Tories and everything they stand for. While those comments were welcomed by some, others called them divisive, with Cabinet Minister Nadhim Zahawi calling the SNP leader's language dangerous. Sturgeon's deputy has supported her though, as he accuses the Tories of pursuing an agenda that is damaging for vulnerable people in Britain. Mr Swinney said on the BBC Breakfast programme, the First Minister said that she detested Conservative policies and the values of the Conservative Party, and I associate myself with those comments, because I think what's clear is the Conservatives are taking the United Kingdom in a direction which is profoundly damaging for many people in our society. Mr Swinney also accused the UK government of not engaging seriously with devolved administrations, insisting he has not received a response to a letter he wrote to Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng to discuss the controversial mini-budget. He explained, "It's not just the letter of October 1st. Over the summer, the Finance Ministers of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland also wrote to the then Chancellor, setting the need for urgent action over the summer to tackle the cost of living crisis, and there hasn't been a response to that letter either." This article was written by Gabriel Mackay.
From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 10th of October 2022, from the sports section, Scotland Euro 2024 qualifying fixture dates confirmed after UEFA mishap, by David Irvin, sports writer. Scotland's Euro 2024 qualifying fixture dates have been confirmed this morning after a UEFA mishap warned to disregard a schedule published yesterday. Scotland were drawn in Group A alongside Spain, Norway, Georgia and Cyprus in yesterday's draw in Frankfurt, Germany. And dates for each match in the group, spanning between March the 25th and November the 19th, were issued yesterday by UEFA. However, an hour later, fans in the National Team Association were informed to disregard the fixture list with a new version to follow. UEFA had warned, "We regret to inform you that we have noticed an issue with the calendar and we ask you to disregard the fixture list that was sent out. A new version will be issued as soon as possible. Apologies for the inconvenience caused." The Scotland national team account added, "Following the above communication we have received from UEFA, we are awaiting clarification as to how this affects our fixtures. We will update when UEFA provide us with more information." But this morning, the new fixture dates were confirmed, with the match list unchanged. Confirming the dates, a Scotland national team Twitter update read, "Following further communication from UEFA this morning, they have now confirmed that the dates at Euro 2024 qualifying fixtures are unchanged." Scotland Euro 2024 fixtures dates in full. Saturday the 25th of March 2023, kick-off 2 p.m, Scotland v Cyprus. Tuesday 28th of March 2023, kick-off 7:45 p.m, Scotland v Spain. Saturday the 17th of June 2023, kick-off 5 p.m, Norway v Scotland. Tuesday the 20th of June 2023, kick-off 7:45 p.m, Scotland v Georgia. Friday the 8th of September 2023, kick-off 7:45 p.m, Cyprus v Scotland. Thursday 12th October 2023, kick-off 7:45 p.m, Spain v Scotland. Thursday the 16th of November 2023, kick-off 5 p.m, Georgia v Scotland. Sunday 19th November 2023, kick-off 7:45 p.m, Scotland v Norway. And that article is by David Irvin. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 10th of October 2022, from the sports section, golf. South Korean youngster Tom Kim equals Tiger Woods' record with Las Vegas victory, by PA Sport. South Korea's Tom Kim became the first player since Tiger Woods to claim 2 PGA Tour victories before his 21st birthday by lifting the trophy at the Shriners Children's Open in Las Vegas. The 20-year-old claimed a 3-shot victory over American duo Patrick Cantlay, who triple bogeyed the final hole after he and Kim had been tied heading to the 18th, and Matthew Naismith. Kim, who also won the Wyndham Championship in August, posted a tournament record equalling total of 24 under par, and was the first player to manage a bogey-free 72 holes on the PGA Tour for 3 years. "It's really amazing," Kim said on PGAtour.com. "A few months ago, I didn't have any status in the US, and now, being a 2-time winner on tour, having that place with Tiger, it's an unbelievable feeling for me. It is an honour for me, and it's definitely a dream come true. I've worked really hard, and my team has worked really hard to this point, and I'm just really grateful and fortunate to have an opportunity like this. I'm having fun playing in the PGA Tour. It's awesome. I'm a 5-year-old at Disneyland for sure. And that article was attributed to PA Sport. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 10th of October 2022, from the Voices section, Leslie Riddoch. Why isn't there more of a fuss over the housing crisis? No debate at the SNP conference in Aberdeen was more arresting, urgent or shocking than conversations beforehand with shell-shocked friends who are facing the real prospect of repossession because of soaring mortgage rates. One couple with a young daughter is buying a new, bigger home. Their guaranteed deal has been withdrawn and repayments are now at 6, not 2%. If they opt to stay and renew their existing mortgage till next March, they'll face the same deal, or worse. Caught betwixt and between, very suddenly. These are folk with decent jobs whose mistake was taking the biggest possible mortgage encouraged by low interest rates. Now they're facing a nightmare, talking with neighbours in their leafy suburb about the prospect of repossession and realising there's nowhere to go if they have to hand back the keys. During the 1980s negative equity crash, a far higher proportion of the Scottish population, including their own parents, lived in council housing and was thus immune. But Scots, with the largest socially rented sector in Europe, were encouraged to join Britain's property owner democracy and finally reached the UK average in 2003. Back then, house price inflation made ownership look sensible. Low interest rates made maxing out the mortgage look as safe as houses, which means many families were up to their ears in debt. Before Liz Truss and quasi-quartine tanked the pound, interest rates jumped, 40% of mortgages were withdrawn, and the average monthly repayment leapt from £630 to £1,100, according to the Joseph Rowntree Foundation. Another friend's daughter was on the brink of buying a flat and had managed to lock in an affordable deal. But after the Black Mini Budget Friday, the seller pulled out because the mortgage deal on his prospective new home was cancelled and he decided to stay put. Now her low interest deal has also been withdrawn and she faces doubled monthly repayments on any new home. Bit by bit, deal by deal, housing claims are falling apart. House building has a ground to halt with contractors and subcontractors being laid off, and that's adding to the number of families whose mortgage repayments are suddenly completely unaffordable. But where's the fuss? There's likely to be a blizzard of mortgage defaulting and home repossessions this winter and in early spring. So why were the alarm bells not being sounded at the SNP, Tory or Labour Party conferences? Sure, the prospect of energy blackouts is scary, as the panic buying of candles attest. But folk will struggle through somehow, even if it means visiting heat banks, wearing bonnets and extra layers indoors, hot water bottles galore and heating just one room. You can put on a coat, but you can't put on a house. And yet, the impending disaster of repossessions hasn't featured in any debate I've heard at the SNP conference. Why not? Was the agenda set before the UK government tanked the pound? Are folk who can afford SNP conference also likely to be paid off their mortgages? Is the prospect of default, when fixed rate deals end next spring, still a bit too distant? Do personality and identity politics so completely dominate politics that young journalists and conference organisers, themselves at the centre of the housing maelstrom, are buckling down and skillfully pinning blame for the crisis on Liz Truss instead of trying to get fellow delegates to address it? The public already blames the Tories. Despite attempts by senior Conservative ministers to blame global pressures, only 24% of voters in the latest YouGov poll buy that. More than half, 52%, blame the UK government. No wonder. As Liz Truss made her keynote speech in Birmingham, the average interest rate for a 2-year fixed rate mortgage breached the 6% barrier for the first time since 2008. How tempting to just leave it there. All the Conservatives' fault. And it very largely is. But that could apply to every other situation which has prompted mitigation by the Scottish Government and sympathetic publicity. Where is the outcry? Support for mortgage payers in difficulty is almost non-existent in Britain. Folk in working age households must have been on universal credit for 9 months previously, with no additional income over that period. Meanwhile, housing benefits have been frozen at September 2019 levels, so that renters are at risk along with people in shared equity arrangements. now facing a double whammy as rents soar across the country. Not, of course, in Scotland, at least not yet, but the emergency rent freeze, enacted last week by the MSPs, takes effect again after 2022 rents in the social rented sector have been set and ends in March before they're due to rise again, prompting calls for a 2-year rent freeze and evictions ban. But that would be a serious blow for the housing associations, whose rents are half the levels charged in the private sector. According to the Scottish Federation of Housing Associations, a rent freeze in the social sector would put new affordable house building at risk, along with energy efficiency improvements to existing stock. It is a perfect storm. But governments are here to help folk weather storms. Otherwise, why pay taxes? Has green, affordable housing suddenly become a luxury item on a wish list drawn up by a bygone era, when public policy wasn't about finding quick fixes and changing the subject? Confidence motions about retrofitting the drafty, cold and damp homes now seem slightly unreal, part of an old political agenda, quietly upended by financial meltdown. Yet hoping the housing market will sort itself out is beyond naive. Without help, tens of thousands of families at every point in the income scale will face eviction, repossession, disruption, and even greater reliance on public assistance. Already someone becomes homeless every 20 minutes in Scotland. Homeless youngsters are 3 times more likely to experience mental health problems. We can't let this get worse. Tackling a broken housing finance market may seem daunting for politicians in a devolved parliament without fiscal policy levers, but what other government will even try? And that column was by Leslie Riddick.
Herald Scotland recorded on Monday 10th of October 2022. Arts and Entertainments. TV Review, The Ice Cream Wars, BBC One, Scotland, Tonight, by Alison Rowett, Senior Politics and Features Writer. If there is one city in Scotland that is haunted by the deeds of the past, it is Glasgow. The not-so-dear green place was home to the ice cream wars of the early 1980s, which culminated in the murder of 6 members of the Doyle family. The crime and the times are brought back in vivid fashion in an outstanding 2-part documentary which starts tonight on BBC One Scotland. Made for BBC Scotland by Two Rivers Media, the Glasgow-based production company behind War and Justice, The Case of Marine A, and Killing Escobar, the series is produced and directed by Robert Neal. With a clip of Selina Scott reading the headlines in BBC Breakfast in the morning of 16 April 1984, the viewer is transported back to the Glasgow of the day, a place that advertised itself as miles better. It was a different story in the housing schemes that spread along the city boundaries. In these deserts with windies, as Billy Connolly called them, there were no shops, so vans toured the streets selling ice cream, sweets and other goods. Rumour had it heroin was available, though one contributor to the documentary says there was no evidence of that. There was certainly money to be made, and it was not long before the gangsters moved in. Andrew Doyle, an ordinary hard-working Glaswegian trying to provide for his family, was one of the drivers targeted and terrorised by the thugs. A shotgun was fired through the windscreen of his van. Still he would not give in. The murders shocked a city that thought itself unshockable. Using a mix of footage from the day and contemporary interviews, the documentary recreates a world that feels at once distant yet instantly recognisable. As in a trial, any documentary stands or falls on the quality of the testimony, and the contributors here are first rate. Besides hearing from police and lawyers, the series draws on the views of some of the best crime reporters and writers in the business, from Marion Scott to Denise Mina by way of Douglas Skelton and Ken Smith. More powerful still is an eyewitness account of the night from someone who lived opposite the Doyle family. Topping everything is the interview with Joe Steele, one of the men wrongly jailed for the murders alongside Thomas Campbell. While the story inevitably hits a slower pace as it documents the legal goings-on, it comes tearing back to the present day with the Steele interview, an encounter that is handled with due sensitivity like much else in the documentary. What the viewer is left with is a feeling of unfinished business, a chasm where justice for the Doyle family should have been. Sometimes there is only journalism to fill such gaps, and it's hard to see any documentary doing a finer job than this one. By Alison Rowett.
Herald Scotland News on Tuesday the 11th of October. Glasgow's Shawlands named among the world's coolest neighbourhoods. An article written by Gabriel Mackay. Shawlands in Glasgow's south side has been named one of the coolest neighbourhoods on the planet, earning congratulations from First Minister Nicola Sturgeon. The honour has been bestowed upon the area by Time Out magazine, which drew up a list of 51 trendy locations across the planet. The Glasgow neighbourhood was one of just 19 European places to make the cut, alongside areas of Lisbon, Havana and Naples. Time Out wrote, "With its great parks, art, coffee and dining, Shawlands keeps Glasgow braw." The neighbouring areas of Langside, Strathbungo and Govan Hill have all played their part in the South Side's rise to eclipse the West End as the city's best area to socialise and live in recent years, but Shawlands is the bustling nexus point of Glasgow below the Clyde. First Minister Nicola Sturgeon responded to the news, tweeting, "Well done, Shawlands, Glasgow's South Side rocks." Colonia Americana in Guadalajara in Mexico was named the coolest neighbourhood, with Shawlands coming in at number 11. Kelham Island in Sheffield and Manchester's Northern Quarter were among the other UK areas name-checked on the list. An article written by Gabriel Mackay. Herald Scotland News on Tuesday the 11th of October. Tributes paid to Scots victim of Irish garage blast tragedy. An article written by Martha Vaughan. Tributes have been paid to a Scot who was killed in a devastating petrol station explosion in Ireland. Martin McGill, who was 49, was one of 10 people killed in the blast in the village of Creesloch in County Donegal on October the 7th, in what is suspected to have been the result of a gas leak. The Garda has now released his picture and confirmed his identity, along with other victims who were aged from 5 to 59. Martin grew up in Kirkintilloch and was described as being an avid Celtic fan. He'd lived in Creesloch, where he was caring for his elderly mother, and it's understood he'd gone to the service station to withdraw cash when the blast happened. His funeral will take place at St Michael's Church in Creesloch today. The father of another of the victims has described her as a little gem. Hugh Harper said his 14-year-old daughter Leona would be very sorely missed, as it emerged the keen sports enthusiast was the last of the 10 people killed to be found amid the ruins of the blast site. Leona was a little gem, very outgoing, very friendly, a lovely person, very quiet, laid back, loved life, loved the outdoors, walking through fields, going fishing, spending time with friends, going to car shows, Mr Harper told County Donegal radio station Highland Radio. He added, "She was very special, very, very special. She's going to be very sorely missed." Leona's mother Donna thanked the digger driver who found her body after a 24-hour search. "I didn't personally know the digger driver. A massive thank you to him, because he just didn't stop until he got her," she said. 24 hours before we got her, and she was the last taken out. The doctors and everybody was amazing the way they treated the whole scene from start to finish with nothing more than respect. Ireland's police force continues to investigate the cause of the blast in a building complex that included the service station and convenience store and residential apartments. It's being treated as a tragic accident. A gas leak is one theory, it's believed. The aunt of another of the 10 victims, 24-year-old Jessica Gallagher, has spoken of the young fashion designer's pride and love for Creesloch. Dolores Gallagher said her niece was due to start a new job in Belfast yesterday. She said, "On behalf of the entire family, we wanted to thank very much the neighbours of the locality in Creesloch, who have been unbelievably kind and generous with their offers of help, and the tactful way that everyone has been so supportive, including those other poor people who have been bereaved or who have injured family members and loved ones, and still managed to find the courage and strength to make contact to offer condolences," she told Highland Radio. "So, on behalf of the entire family, I'd like to thank everyone for that." Jessica was the most beautiful young woman. She was very artistic. She qualified as a fashion designer. When she was a student in Paris, one of her assignments was to work on something from home, and she produced a beautiful picture of Muckish, the County Donegal mountain, in the moonlight. The other 8 victims were 50-year-old Robert Garwer and his 5-year-old daughter, Shauna Flanagan Garwer, who were in the shop to buy a birthday cake. 48-year-old James O'Flaherty, 39-year-old Catherine O'Donnell and her 13-year-old son, James Monaghan, 59-year-old Hugh Kelly, and 49-year-old Martina Martin. Yesterday, King Charles extended his condolences to the people of Ireland. In a message to the President of Ireland, Michael D. Higgins, the King said his and the Queen Consort's sympathies are with those who have lost loved ones. He said, "My wife and I were filled with immense sadness when we heard of that appallingly tragic explosion. However inadequate this may be under such shattering circumstances, we wanted you to know that our most heartfelt sympathy and deepest condolences are with those families and friends who have lost their loved ones." An article written by Martha Vaughan.
The Herald, the 11th of October, and the Arts and Eds section. Sparking the Minds of the Readers, The Art of the Columnist by Neil Mackay. As a columnist, I speak for only one person, myself, so I won't dare explain why all columnists write. I'll dare, though, to explain why this columnist writes. This particular column is, after all, meant to be where the Herald explains itself to readers, in itself a valuable and egalitarian stance. So let me address what I see as the art of the column. A decent columnist must always be honest with themselves. I'd sooner chop off my pinky finger than put a false opinion out there. If readers hate what I say or love what I say, that's fine. But I want their reaction to be based on the fact that I've been true to myself. I'm in no political party, though clearly that doesn't mean I've had no political opinions. I have lots of them. So I wield this pen for no other reason than the joy of engaging honestly with an audience. A rare pleasure, an honour in truth. A column is often the working out of an idea, hopefully a relatively original one. The purpose of this working out is to elicit an intellectual response from readers. I'm not in the game of seeking anger or shock, unless, of course, anger and shock seem a fitting response. But I am in the game of exploring ideas. A professor of my acquaintance recently told me that he most enjoys columnists he disagrees with, as they make his mind spark. I sincerely hope that as my own mind sparks, unravelling in words how I feel about issues which affect us all, that readers' minds spark too. It's the sparking which matters, not the agreement or disagreement. As a journalist, I'm an old school Rythian. It's our job to educate, in the sense of uncovering news, entertain and inform. The entertaining is really important. Someone could write the idea that changed the world, but if they bore you to death, nobody will care. A columnist also needs to possess pretty thick skin. I think I was born with elephant-eyed. But it's not just readers' boos or thankfully applause, sometimes which columnists have to prepare for. It's also the fact of bearing one's soul a little. I write across a range of issues, from the political to the personal. When I delve into my own life material, I do so often to try to illustrate a sense of what I see as the human condition. You won't get stories from me of my great successes, but more of how sometimes events which I struggled with may reflect the struggles in the lives of readers. To be told that these columns have helped people is the greatest joy of the job. That was by Neil Mackay. The Herald, the 11th of October, and the Arts and Eds section. University Challenge, BBC Two, Episode 7, St Andrews versus Gonville and Chaos, by Alison Rowett. BBC Two iPlayer. St Andrews, recently named Best University in the UK, continued a good year last night with a win, sending them through to the next round of University Challenge. The final score was St Andrews 140, Gonville and Chaos 120. Quizmaster Jeremy Paxman said the two universities had combined ages of well over a millennium, but the players were among the youngest in the series. This was particularly true of Gonville and Chaos, where the average age of the student body overall is 20. Three of the St Andrews team also looked in the same age bracket, yet it was to be the oldest member of the team who played a crucial role in their victory. Representing St Andrews were Alec Csukai, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, from Workingham, but Berkshire, studying astronomy and astrophysics. Simon Gibbons, Misterston, Nottinghamshire, Masters in Sustainable Development. Joseph Cryan, captain, Lune Valley, Lancashire, and Sofia Anisimova, Moscow, reading for a PhD in military history. For Gonville and Chaos, Zoe Zhang, London, reading history and German. Jasper Mon, Sevenoaks, Kent, studying Ukrainian, Russian and German. Abigail Tan, captain, Brentwood, maths. And Stefan Ivanov from Bulgaria, physics. First on the scoreboard was St Andrews, courtesy of Simon Gibbons, the oldest member of the team, who correctly identified the RSPB from its founders, Emily Williamson and Eliza Phillips. The bonus round was on famous photographers, but no points were scored. Gonville and Chaos took the second starter for 10 on Wordle, but came a cropper with a bonus round on names of places in England and Scotland. Asked to name a town between Edinburgh and Dunbar ending with Ington, they answered Warrington. The correct answer was Haddington. With a quarter of the half-hour quiz gone, the teams had scored just 10 points each. St Andrews Cryan won the next starter on Barbados, and teammate Gibbons followed this with the picture round. 3 correct bonus questions later, St Andrews were ahead 50 points to 15. Ivanov dragged Gonville and Chaos back into the game, only for the team to have another poor bonus round, this one on films of cult director John Waters. Ivanov rallied again, and by the halfway point the teams were neck and neck on 45 points. St Andrews Anisimova won a starter on Russian film director Andrei Tarkovsky. In the bonuses on semi-autobiographical television series, Kasuke's guess on Idris Elba proved correct, as was Anisimova's insistence on Mae Martin as the answer to the third bonus question. St Andrews had pulled ahead 85 to 45, only to hit a bad stretch. They lost 5 points on an incorrect starter answer and struck out in a trio of bonus questions on physics. A late rally by Chaos and Gonville kicked the score to 120, with St Andrews just ahead with a 130. With time running out, in the next starter for 10 was to prove the clincher. Gibbons swooped to conquer for St Andrews, and a moment later the gong was struck, leaving St Andrews the winners. Next week, University of Sheffield versus University College London. That was by Alison Rowett.
And that was this week's The Herald podcast, normally recorded in our studio at the Bishopbriggs Media Centre, currently recorded from our volunteers' homes with the publisher's kind permission. Thanks for listening.